Welcome to the Open Forum in the Villages, Florida podcast. In this show, we are going to talk to leaders in the community, leaders of clubs, and interesting folks who live here in the villages to give perspectives of what is happening here in the villages. We hope to add a new episode most Fridays at 9 a.m. We have converted all of our shows to Buzzsprout. Of course, you can still listen to Apple Podcast, Amazon Music, and about 20 other podcast platforms. Your favorite podcast player will still work. We are now a listener-supported podcast. You can become a supporter for only $3, or you can choose to pay more per month. Go to openforuminthevillages.com and click on Support in the black box. There will be a shout-out for supporters in episodes. This is a shout-out to supporters, Tweet Coleman, Dan Capellan, Ed Williams, Alvin Stenzel, and major supporter Dr. Craig Curtis at K2 in the Villages. We will be hearing more from Dr. Curtis with short Alzheimer's tips each week.
This is Mike Roth on Open Forum in the Villages. I'm here today with Dr. Jamie Knoll. Some of you may remember Jamie was with us about 2 weeks ago, and she was talking about food and nutrition. And today I've asked her to put on her realtor hat, and she's going to be talking about the real estate market here in the Villages. Jamie, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Mike.
After Jamie's 35 years in the pharmaceutical industry, in a hospital setting, and not being one who wanted to stop learning and doing, Jamie is in the pursuit of becoming a top real estate agent within the Villages. She's an independent realtor with Realty Executives here in the Villages. Realty Executives enjoys the number one slot here in the Villages for market share of all MLS companies doing business in the Villages. Jamie, my first question might be, how do the independent MLSs rate themselves? How do you measure market share in the Villages?
It's in dollars by how much is sold within the Villages.
Okay, so it's not the number of units, it's the number of dollars.
Correct.
Okay, great. Now, Jamie, could you tell our listeners a little bit, here we are at the end of May 2023, tell our listeners a little bit about what the real estate market looks like here in the Villages.
Sure. Well, the most recent data we have from the MLS shows us that it's still a seller's market, but a bit less than a year ago. But we have to keep in mind that a year ago, we were still dealing with the pandemic, and that resulted in influx of buyers. So it's really not surprising that we're seeing a little bit of pullback from the last year. Mm-hmm. As of the most recent data that we have available in the Villages, we have about 3.5 months of inventory, which is up from 1.2 months a year ago. And the median time to contract is now 44 days, up from 5 days a year ago. And
rather significant change.
Yes, it is. And again, we have to take into account that the pandemic really influenced those numbers quite a bit.
And how many days or month supply of realty is in the inventory now?
About 3.5 months.
Wow. That would leave me with the suggestion that the average buyer might be stuck in their house 90 to 100 days after they list it. 3.5 months, about 100 days.
3.5 months.
Worth of inventory.
Worth of inventory, meaning that if we sold every house that's on the market, within 3.5 months, we would have nothing to sell. If that number is less than 6, it indicates it's a seller's market. If it's greater than 6, it indicates it's a buyer's market.
Oh. Thanks for clarifying that.
Absolutely. And, also now the median percent of original list price is 94.8%, down from 100% a year ago. So we do have some funny numbers in the Villages, but we have to keep in mind that the market here changes very rapidly. And we really don't want to look back more than 45 days when it comes to evaluating, doing comp analyses, etc. Mm-hmm. Interestingly, the percent of cash sales in the Villages is around 57%, up from 35% a year ago.
How would you explain that?
I don't have an explanation for it. I wish I did.
It seems strange. In a rather inflationary market, it would seem that the number of mortgages would be going up, not down.
Right, exactly. So I don't have an explanation for that.
So, Jamie, it seems that's a little bit more challenging to sell a home in the Villages now than it was a year ago. What advice would you give potential sellers at this point in time?
Well, Mike, first, sellers should understand that there is a balance between the price they list their home versus how fast it will sell. So while of course we want top dollar for our homes, it doesn't really help us at all to price a home too high such that it's not getting shown and there are no offers coming in. A seller only gets one chance to be the shiny new penny. Pricing a home too high and having sit on the market, accumulating days on the market with no activity is risky, in that eventually it's no longer the shiny new penny and people are wondering what's wrong with the house, why it isn't selling. So you want to hit the market with a reasonable price based on the current comps for the best and least painful experience.
Mm-hmm. And that's always a difficult equation for most homeowners. The real estate market might not support that price.
Correct. And this is why most FSBOs or for sale by owners don't succeed. Within about 30 days, the homeowner realizes that they need the help of a realtor.
And that's help in marketing and in pricing.
Absolutely. It's a delicate balance and it's not an exact science. A professional realtor within the villages knows the market, and hiring a realtor ensures you're getting the most recent comparative analysis, which includes houses sold in the last 45 days and currently active comparative homes, which is your current competition.
Mm-hmm.
Now, realtors do often work with people who want their house listed well above where it should be based on the current data. But for those sellers, I would remind them that, number one, keep in mind that the more money your home sells for, the more money the realtor makes on the deal. So if your realtor is suggesting a lower price, it's because he or she is acting in your best interest to get the home sold. It certainly doesn't make the realtor more money to suggest a lower price on your home. So understand that the realtor is trying to strike that balance of price versus time on the market for you.
Well, you do have those unfortunate situations here in the villages where the original homeowner has died and it's a family member from another area of the country attempting to unload an unwanted home.
Mm-hmm.
They certainly don't need to live in the home, and a lot of them don't care how long it lays on the market. So they might want to overprice their home.
Yeah, and you can do that, but again, it's, you're taking that risk of, you only have that one chance to be the shiny new penny. And once the house is on the market for so many days, in comparison to other homes on the market, people start to wonder, well, what's wrong with that home? Why isn't it selling? So, it's okay really to overprice the home in the beginning. I mean, it's not a great idea. It's okay, but you have to quickly adjust to what's happening in the market.
Quickly reduce the price to the market for that particular.
Absolutely. Don't sit on it.
This is Mike Roth with Dr. Craig Curtis for today's Alzheimer's tip. Dr. Curtis, in past tips, you've told our listeners to walk as a good exercise 5 days a week. Is there any other exercise that they can do which will be beneficial to their brains, which is not going to be terribly exerting or can be accomplished by people who have weak hip joints or weak knee joints or shoulder joints?
Absolutely. Any type of exercise, what we call moderate exercise, can help brain health, such as a stationary bicycle.
Mm-hmm.
Simply pedaling a stationary bicycle, it's very low stress on the joints. It's very good for your heart and very good for your brain.
Thank you. Jamie, let me ask you another question. What about buyers? Why should they use a realtor, an MLS realtor, in the villages?
Well, working with a competent realtor in the villages ensures your best interests are being represented. Realtors not only help you find homes that suit your criteria, they negotiate on your behalf for the best deal, and then they see the deal through to successful closing. This ensures that needed repairs are done, warranties are acquired as desired, and that the buyer has all the information needed to start their utilities, amongst many other expected and unexpected obstacles that can arise from contract to closing.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing I'd like to point out to buyers is that it doesn't cost them anything to be represented by a realtor. The seller pays commission based on an agreement that was made when the listing contract was signed between the seller and the listing agent. So if it doesn't cost the buyer anything to have his or her interest represented, why make the decision not to be represented?
Mm-hmm. So that raises a couple of other interesting questions. I know people don't like to talk about price, but I do. If you listed your home with a MLS agent, on average, what kind of cost would they have?
The buyers would have no cost.
Okay, and the sellers?
The sellers agree on the rate of commission at the time they list the house with the realtor.
Average 5%, 6%, what is it?
It's around 5% on average, I would say.
Okay, and based on your knowledge, if it was listed with the villages, would the commission rate be the same?
I really don't know what the villages does. They're not very forthcoming with their own data.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No one's told you? In the villages, we have both types of realtors, the MLS realtors and the Village's realtors. What's the difference, and why should buyers choose one over the other?
Well, the VLS, or the Villages Listing Service, is the proprietary listing service that the Villages provides for potential buyers and sellers. Their sales agents work for the developer, and while they're licensed through the state, they are not part of the MLS, and really, they are not realtors. They are sales agents for the developer. And although they can sell new or pre-owned homes in the Villages, they do not represent the interests of the buyer. They represent the interests of the developer. So that's one thing for buyers to keep in mind.
So now, they are agents of the developer.
Correct. So they are sales agents for the developers. They are not realtors.
Okay. In Ohio, where I came from, working for a developer, you didn't have to be a licensed realtor. In Florida, do they all agents have to be licensed realtors? Any
agent that receives any type of commission has to be licensed by the state. Mm-hmm. If they simply received, a basic salary, then they would not have to be licensed.
Okay.
But to be a realtor, an agent has to have passed the state exam and take an oath on the Code of Ethics from the National Association of Realtors. And in all cases, buying or selling, a realtor represents the interests of their client.
Okay. If you list a house, then your client is the owner of the house.
Correct.
And then you have to protect their interest as a listing agent.
Yeah, and an advantage of using an MLS realtor as a seller is that your home gets infinitely more exposure once it's listed on the MLS. If you sell your home through the Villages, it really only gets exposure on the Villages website and in the Daily Sun. So consider that the majority of people, when first looking at homes, go to a website like Zillow or Realtor.com. If your house is listed with an MLS realtor, your home will show up on Zillow and Realtor.com, as well as a plethora of other websites. If you list with the Villages, your home will not show up on Zillow or Realtor.com. So the bottom line here is that exposure sells homes, and you will get infinitely more exposure if you list with an MLS realtor than with the Villages sales agents.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any kind of statistics that can tell a potential seller how many times their home might be looked at on a site like Zillow or the MLS listings?
One thing I would like to point out, though, since we were talking about the difference between VLS and MLS, is, on the other hand, I'd like to point out that if you're a buyer in the Villages looking for new construction, only the Villages sales agents can sell those properties. So this is where you'd have no choice but to go through the Villages. MLS realtors do not represent the developer and therefore cannot sell new construction. But so I think a fair analogy to compare an MLS realtor with a VLS sales agent would be to compare seeing a physician versus a podiatrist. Podiatrists are very skilled in the care and surgery for feet and ankles, but they can't take care of other health problems that may arise. On the other hand, a physician can take care of the entire body and also has the ability to prescribe medicines that the podiatrist can't. Both have their place, but it really is like comparing apples to oranges.
Mm-hmm. This is one of my favorite areas of real estate, having a seller of a home in the Villages. Who would best represent that home? A independent MLS agent or the Villages?
I can tell you that, MLS realtors are always representing the interests of the client. But again, going back to what I was saying previously, exposure sells homes. And when you list with the VLS, the Villages agents, your home gets listed on the Villages website and it gets listed in the Daily Sun. But when you list with an MLS realtor, the house shows up on Zillow and Realtor.com and Trulia and a whole host of other websites. So it gets way more exposure than when it's listed with the VLS.
Mm-hmm. And when you go on the sites like Zillow, if I'm sitting in Cincinnati or Boston or Los Angeles, the house shows up.
Correct.
And only those houses show up.
Yeah, the VLS listed homes do not show up on Zillow, Realtor.com, Trulia, etc.
So a potential buyer would have to either call or come to the Villages to contact a Villages realtor.
Or, find the Villages.com website because all the homes that are for sale by the Villages are listed on that website. But again, it's a lot easier when you know that 80% of people who start looking for a home start on Zillow.
That's what I did.
And, I can tell you that personally, I have listed homes that were on the market with the Villages for 6 months and didn't sell. And then when I got it and gave it all the exposure, it sold within 30 days.
Mm-hmm. Is it typical for a listing contract to be a 6-month contract?
Yes, I would say that's pretty typical. I mean, you can make it for as long or as short as you want. But, in fairness, what a lot of people don't realize is that when you list your home with the realtor is investing their own personal money to get your house sold. And so, some people come and they say, well, I really only want a 2-month contract or a 3-month contract. If you list with me, it doesn't cost you anything to get out of your contract other than to, pay the money that I have invested to market your home. If you terminate the contract before the 6-month point, it doesn't cost you. I don't charge any money. I do know that the Villages does charge people money if they try to get out of their contract.
So if I listed with the Villages and in 2 months it didn't sell and I wanted to terminate their contract, there would be a fee for termination?
Yeah, my understanding is that you would pay a fee for every month that was left on that contract. I've been told it's somewhere around $1,200 a month.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And in terms of marketing a home, what are the expenses that Realty Executives has in marketing a home?
Well, it's not Realty Executives because we're all independent contractors, so we pay for ourselves. So if I list a home, number one, it goes on MLS, which I pay for. It also goes in the Daily Sun, which I pay for. I also do...
How many days in the Daily Sun would a typical home that you list go on?
It depends. Every realtor is a little bit different. For me personally, right now, I have ads in the Daily Sun on Saturdays. Some realtors put ads in for other days of the week.
Mm-hmm. Why do the realtors put all these pictures of themselves in the ads? It doesn't do anything for me. I say if I'm looking for a Bridgeport, for instance, that's what I want to see. I don't want to see a picture of a guy or a lady or a husband and wife or a real estate team.
It's a little bit of branding.
A little bit of branding. Okay. And that should be paid for by the realtor.
Well, and that's a very good point. And that's why I don't charge a fee if somebody wants to terminate their contract with me, because the truth is I do get something out of being able to list your home. And so that's the fairness. But I would ask for the amount that I have paid to put your house into paper.
If any of our listeners are interested in listing their home with you, Jamie, how should they reach you?
I'd be delighted to help any of our listeners, and I can be reached by text or phone at 352-459-5892.
And do you have an email address that they can contact you?
Sure. jamieknoll.realtor@gmail.com.
Is there a specific website that you have for the homes that you've listed?
Yes, it's jamieknollrealtor.com.
Mm-hmm.
They can also, if you go to my website, you can also search for any home in the Villages. And in fact, you can search by village, you can search by amenities, a number of different ways that you really can't search on Zillow or Trulio or any of the others.
So in other words, if I was looking for a home that was less than 2 years old and had a pool and was in Sumter County,
it's a bit easier and time-consuming to go to my website and look for those specifics than it would be going on something like Zillow or Realtor.com.
So if I was looking for a home with a pool and a 3-car garage and less than 3 years old, how would I do that on your website?
Well, the best way to do that, Mike, is to hire a really good realtor like me.
So if they're looking for a special home with a 4-car garage, maybe an extra garage building, maybe a 4-car garage plus a golf cart garage. Sure. What's the best way for them to find that home?
Well, when you get to that level of detail, it's not a bad option to start on my website, but it's really going to be best to just give me a call and I'll help you find that house.
And your direct cell phone number is?
352-459-5892. When people buy a home in the Villages, they typically buy the home they think they're going to be in forever.
Right. That's right. That's what I did.
Right. That's what most people do. Along the way, they may find that they like a different model better. They want to live in a different area of the Villages. For whatever reason, they wind up selling that home. Probably 100% of the time, they are going to make money off that house. And so if they're trading down, then clearly they have money left in their pocket. Mm-hmm. If they're trading up, it's because they're prepared to do so. But the bottom line is, because of the historical sales price trend, it's really never a bad time to sell in the Villages, except for maybe January of the year. That's when we always have a dip.
That's when we should be buying.
Good point.
Buy low, sell high.
You got it.
Thanks very much for being with us today, Jamie.
Thank you so much for having me, Mike. It's been a pleasure.
Remember, our next episode will be released next Friday at 9 a.m. Should you want to become a major supporter of the show or have questions, please contact us at mike@rothvoice.com. If you know someone who should be on the show, contact us at mike@rothvoice.com. We thank everyone for listening to the show. The content of the show is copyrighted by Roth Voice 2023, all rights reserved.